Jeremy Siegel. Oh my God, Jeremy Siegel's back in the picture. Jeremy Siegel's about the University of Pennsylvania, the Wharton professor who's been around for literally ever. Jeremy Siegel made an interesting argument yesterday. He said Powell should resign and essentially call Trump's bluff. If the economy takes off, great. Trump gets the credit. If it craps the bed, then Trump owns that. What do you think about this approach versus the volatility and drama the current situation is having on the markets?
I like it. I agree with Siegel. I think it's a ballsy move. I think, if Trump wants to run the world, let him take responsibility for all the the Trump's number one thing is to blame people for things that don't work and take credit for everything that does work. I think the more you can corner him to taking responsibility for everything that he does, the better off everybody is. And I think the sooner we can sort of get through this, what are we waiting for? If Trump wants total control of all media,
I'll tell you what's wrong.
I think we just give him control of everything. And, create a domestic military force, let them just start shooting people, create a state-run media, create a state-run central bank. Let's see how he does. It'll be fun.
What happened to you, Dylan?
Why fight him?
What happened to you, Dylan? All right, here. Let me just say this really quick because I'm going to be really quick. I hate this idea because why would you do something just to...
Who wants to be the irrational, exuberant guy?
Who wants to do something so you can prove a point and yet hurt everybody else in the process of doing it? It makes absolutely no sense. I don't care if two crazy egomaniacs or whatever it is really are want to prove something or see who's right or who's wrong. That's not what this is all about. This is about the country, and this is about what's best for everybody. So I hate this idea, and I hate everything about it. And he's not the only person to say this. I've seen a couple people come out and say this. I hate just the whole concept of that. Makes no sense to me. But let's go to the next slide because I want to keep moving. Dylan, markets are at all-time highs, and we're celebrating tariffs of 15% instead of 25 or 30%. It's like being excited so we can save a cancer patient by cutting off their leg so they won't die. Structurally, the world has changed, but the markets seem completely unfazed. Why is that?
Because the U.S. dollar is down 20%, and so the repricing of risk as it relates to America's relevance in the world is reflected in the collapse of our currency, which allows our domestic equity market to remain prosperous.
What do you think about the repricing of gold? If it's been a chatter, it's been talked about.
I think that everything's. I think that the axe that grinds the wheel here is the U.S. dollar, and that the U.S. dollar has been reduced by a fifth in its value. It's probably the most relevant security instrument on earth is the U.S. dollar, and I think it radiates everywhere, whether it's a Bitcoin, whether it's gold, whether it's silver, or whether it's U.S. equities or home values or any of it. So I'm not sure what you mean when you say about gold. You mean that sell-off the other day?
No. It had to do with just the gold holding its value up here because the thought is that, maybe gold plays a bigger role eventually than the U.S. dollar does.
I think that's logical. Yeah. I think it's true for gold. I think it's true for silver. I think it's true for Bitcoin. I think it's true for all commodities.
So, okay.
And I think it's also why the stock market performs so well is because all of the consequences.
Yeah. I mean, you see the whole purpose of this question, though, is because negotiated 15% tariffs after they were actually higher before that. But who cares? Let's move to the next slide.
Surplus U.S. government, $113 billion. That's your
Tesla
$27
sales,
billion versus 316.
Tesla sales were pretty bad last quarter, and the brand has become politicized. Regardless of your political affiliation, do you think this type of misstep is something AI would help to avoid? Will AI be able to stay focused on a business's core objectives and not get distracted? This is a really interesting question because I've heard this presented for many different companies when you have basically do we want CEOs that shut up? Do we want CEOs that are focused only on the business? Do we want CEOs that are vocal? It's just an interesting argument. sometimes we get distracted and we have people who support us and people who disagree, blah, blah, blah. But if AI takes over even more and more white collar jobs, does that benefit the singular focus? Does that benefit of singular focus outweigh some of the job losses that may occur? It's a very tough question.
I believe that the primary job of a CEO is, I believe every CEO in the world has three responsibilities. One, sales. Two, risk management, budgeting, where will resources be allocated? And three, leadership in defining the culture of the organization. And it's not clear to me that AI is qualified to drive sales as an avatar of the company in the world. It's not clear to me that AI is qualified to generate or define the culture of the company, although I suspect AI might be very well qualified for budgeting potentially. So I think that of the three major CEO responsibilities, that only one of the three come into the world where AI might make things better, which would be in terms of risk management.
I personally think, I'll get Tony's opinion in 1 second, but I personally think this would be an absolute disaster to have AI in any kind of management role. I can't, as bad as some personalities are and as crazy as some people are, I can't even imagine a worst case scenario than AI replacing senior management executives and board members and middle management, everything. I can't imagine a world that is less productive, and it would just be a complete disaster. Bat, what do you think?
I think Dylan said it excellently. I mean, Dylan, I've never been a CEO, but I would follow you if that was your main three goals, 100%. So I think
that's the job description for CEO in every company in the world: sales, culture, and risk management. I mean, that's honestly the reason why I believe the CEOs were so responsible during the banking crisis, because one of their three responsibilities was risk calibration. And if Dick Fuld or whoever the bank CEOs were back in 2009, they were the ones that said, okay, take another billion, take another, like they were the ones that kept winding up the tolerable risk threshold. Mm-hmm. And that can't be done without the CEO's approval.
Is there somebody that thinks it wasn't a CEO issue back in 2009?
Yeah, people say, it's the ratings agencies, or people took too many loans, people borrowed too much money. I mean, all this jazz.
Part of the trade deal with Japan included a $550 billion investment. While details are still being worked out, some have described it as something of a sovereign wealth fund. The idea of a sovereign wealth fund was what is that word?
An anathema.
An anathema.
Unthinkable.
An anathema. Who the hell uses the word an anathema?
Some producer Josh. Really likes to
gotta be Josh.
An anathema. Okay, that's a word I've never used before. An anathema to capitalism. But we're moving away from a truly capitalist society with things like protectionist policies. So is a sovereign wealth fund a bad idea? And is the answer dependent on who's making the investment decisions?
So I am a Brandeisian. I
don't know. Is that somebody who went to Brandeis?
I'm a Spartan.
That's not a funny thing. Okay. Judge Louis Brandeis was a big Supreme Court justice back in the day, way back in the day, but still a justice of the Supreme Court of the United States. And he had one operating principle that I subscribe to and I advocate for as a Brandeisian myself. And that was this: it is much better to have distributed decision-making and distributed resources such that investment and decisions are made as close to the problem that is being solved as possible. So the more you accumulate power and resources in a singular location that is at the greatest distance away from the situation you are dealing with, the more likely you are to have corruption, abuse, and bad decision making. I believe a centralized investment fund or sovereign wealth fund is ripe for catastrophic corruption and terrible capital misallocation, and it is a total contradiction of the very Brandeisian theories upon which I base my life.
I'm with Dylan. I'm going to sound smart.
You're a Brandeisian too, Tony?
Sure.
The
Good enough for
closest
Dylan.
thing-
I'll have the Brandeisian too.
Brandeisian.
The Brandeisian is not like a Bronzino. You don't order the Brandeisian. I mean, I once knew a girl that went to Brandeis. Does that help?
If Brandeis is named after Judge Louis Brandeis, I mean, come on. I'll send you guys the white paper. You'll love it. I mean, listen, forget Mr. Brandeis, or for Justice Brandeis, I should say. Consolidating resources is an anathema to the American way of life. The states' rights, distributed power. I mean, that's our entire country is based on the idea of distributed capital, distributed resources, distributed decision making. The very reason I thought the Republican Party didn't like big government was because I thought the Republican Party was an advocate for smaller government and more state power, although apparently when the Republicans are in control of the government, that opinion reverses, and then they just want to have all the power and get a sovereign wealth fund. But who knew?
Yeah, Sosnoff.
I'm going to pass on this one. That's too good. You're too good.
All right. Okay.
Let's go to the next slide. When you were at Bloomberg, for those that don't know, Dylan was on the news desk, the first on the news desk.
My first job. I was one of the first reporters ever hired at 22. I was part of the first team of reporters. Very exciting.
When you were at Bloomberg, when what I remember as the first meme stock blew up, it was a company named iOmega that made memory drives for PCs. I kind of remember it, but I don't think I ever traded it. Has the frenzy changed at all since then? And what goes through your mind and when you see things like Kohl's or Krispy Kreme make an absurd move higher?
I wish I owned it.
That's fair.
I mean,
remember iOmega?
I remember iOmega. I remember more UUNet. Do you remember UUNet? UUNet was going to be it probably was actually the pipes of the internet. This is like, because remember you had America Online was like the big to do, and then Windows 95 was coming out. Remember Microsoft
Sure.
Windows 95 was going to be like a whole situation. Obviously, it came out in 1995. It was quite an exciting moment. And then you had your big America Online situation. Remember America Online bought Time Warner, which was kind of comical.
Yeah, it went into the S&P 500.
I mean, that was quite the moment. And anyway, that was all sort of its contemporaneous. The Netscape IPO, iOmega went off. UUNet, like I mentioned, was a big one. The difference now, I guess, is that I think that some of those companies probably had a little bit more there's more enterprise value, I think, back in the 90s. Now I really think that it's something, just the crypto being the ultimate example, something can have literal, or especially not even Bitcoin, I'm talking like, Dylan coin or whatever, some cockamamie coin can go off with is absolutely. I mean, my first job was as an intern in the compliance department at Merrill Lynch when I was still an undergraduate. And I would receive all these lectures from these older compliance lawyers who still smoked in the office, because you could still smoke in the office then. And they would lecture me about blue sky in the 1930s and the importance of there being enterprise value and earnings and people and whatever, and we can't just be selling blue. And he's like, it's called blue sky laws, kid. You can't just be out there selling a piece of blue sky, and it's illegal. They'll put you in jail, kid. You better watch it. Trying to scare me. And now I feel like half this whole situation is blue sky. So the crypto, everything, it's all blue sky as far as I'm concerned, and it seems to be all legal. So if anything, I would say, one, I wish I owned every last one of them, because why not? And two, I thought they were blue sky laws, but apparently not.
It's funny because Tony and I kind of remember the obviously, I don't remember iOmega, but I kind of remember,
You remember the moment, Windows 95, AOL, come on, Netscape IPO.
I was trading AOL when it went into the S&P 500.
Tony was trading in there. So I mean, obviously he remembers it. I had a bunch of friends actually trading in there. So yeah, we absolutely remember those times. I think that's a little different than the meme stock. I would compare meme stock more to like, the whole .com stuff. I think those are, that's a little bit closer.
Meaning pets.com and all that. Yeah.
Books a million, pets.com, whatever. I forgot half the other ones, but
Sure.
WorldCom, all that whole group there.
Bernie Evers, remember that guy, the gym teacher turned global billionaire CEO? That guy was amazing. I love that guy. I think he went to jail. He went to jail.
I think he died in jail, didn't he?
It was not pretty. Whatever happened, it wasn't good. It wasn't good. But he was charming. Very exciting fellow.
Can I tell you my best story about WorldCom? So they ripped, when we started Thinkorswim, they ripped us off blind.
Please.
And they ripped us off blind for something, and they just completely scammed us. And because we were new, it's just connectivity stuff. They charged us like $35,000 or $40,000 for something that didn't even exist, and they were going to litigate against us. And
Sure.
And our lawyer said, you know what, just pay them and let's just move on so we don't have to deal with them. And I'm like, hell no. I go, these guys are a bunch of criminals. They're going to go out of business. They went out of business, never paid a dime.
If you're not subscribed, subscribe right here. And if you want to meet me and the team in person at our next live event, hit the link at the top of the description.